Hello, this is how to install Windows 10 on Linux in a QEMU virtual machine using virtio. So Windows 10 was released in 2015. The newest version and the final one is 22H2. We're going to need a virtio drivers for Linux ISO file, and depending if it's end of life Windows 10, we're going to be able to use either the latest version of the virtio ISO or the version that was released before October 2025. This is how I get to the ISO file. I search on Google for Fedora People virtio. I'm going for the latest virtio, and it's from September 2025. So it should still support Windows 10 because Windows 10 was still supported by October 2025. So we want the newest version. We want the largest file in here, which is the ISO file, 753 megabytes in size. And I'm going to download the one file that has the version in the file name. So virtio win 0.1.285.iso. The file has finished downloading. This is how you can download the Windows 10 ISO installer file. Let's select a different language. Says select edition, Windows 10 multi-edition. Language, English US. (64-bit) download. Save. And now we can create the virtual machine. I'm using the virtualization software Virtual Machine Manager. Main menu, File, New Virtual Machine, Local ISO, Forward, Browse. It's always a good idea to press the refresh button in here. Windows 10, choose, and in here we're going to write Windows 10, forward, 10 gigabytes, 14 vCPUs, 200 gigabytes of storage, and customize. Finish. We're going to keep BIOS, but you can select UEFI. Windows kind of wants to be installed, prefers to be installed on UEFI, but then QEMU and Virt Manager prefers BIOS. This is a change that I usually do. I only have one CPU socket. But probably this setting is not really needed. And we want the virtual machine to use virtio as much as possible. So we're going to use the virtual disk is going to be virtio. And also the network interface card is going to be virtio. We're going to have two ISO files mounted in two CD-ROM drives at the same time. The first one is going to be the Windows 10 installer ISO. And the second one that we're going to add right now is the virtio drivers. Virtio win 0.1.285.iso. Okay, so review, we kept BIOS. virtio disk storage, network interface card virtio, and two CD-ROM drives, Windows installer, and virtio. Begin installation. It's creating the virtual machine, including the storage. It's booting straight from the CD-ROM drive, from the first one with the installer. Notice that I have selected the network interface card to be of type virtio, which means that during the installer there will be no network connection, and that's important because this will make it easier for us to install Windows without having a Microsoft Online account. I want to install Windows 10 and use a local Windows user account. English. It didn't ask for the version of operating system that I want. So I'm not sure what I have downloaded, if it's Windows 10 Pro or Home. Install now. Resize to VM. I do not have a product key. And now it's the selector for the type of Windows 10 operating system. I want Windows 10 Pro. This is what I always use, x64, which means 64-bit. Next. I accept the EULA and install only without keeping files. At this point, the virtual machine cannot find the virtual machine's storage, so the hard disk, virtual hard disk, because the virtual disk is using virtio and needs drivers, Windows kernel mode modules drivers. So load driver, browse, E:, AMD64, W10, OK, next. And now the Windows kernel can see the storage, 200 gigabytes. Next. So we're going to install Windows as usual with two places where we want to pay attention. The first is that we want to install using a Windows local user account, not a Microsoft Online account. And the second one is after the installation finishes and the computer reboots and we're logged into Windows 10 as the usual user that we create in here, the administrative user. We're going to install the rest of virtio drivers for Windows, including the one for the network interface card, and this way we'll get network connectivity. Restart once. Okay, let's look at the CD-ROM drive. Is still available the ISO file in the first CD-ROM drive. This is because Virt Manager will remove the ISO from the CD-ROM drive automatically for certain virtual machine templates after the first reboot. So for Windows, it seems that it keeps the Windows 10 ISO inside the CD-ROM drive, and it will try to boot from the CD-ROM drive. No, it will try to boot from the hard disk after the first reboot. Okay. Anyway, the ISO, if you keep in a hardware computer, if you keep the Windows 10 installer DVD inside the DVD drive and you keep rebooting, Even if the computer tries to boot from the CD-ROM drive, from the DVD with the Windows 10 installer, because that's the first in the boot order, that CD-ROM will ask you if you want to boot from the CD-ROM, and it will wait 2 seconds. Otherwise, it will automatically continue booting from the hard disk, not from the CD-ROM. Okay. We'll keep the defaults as much as possible. No secondary layout. And this is the place where, because we're not connected to the internet, the only network interface card in the virtual machine uses virtio drivers, and those are not available out of the box inside the Windows 10. Windows 10 thinks, the installer thinks that I do not have a network interface connection and internet connectivity, which is good in this case, because I have access to this button. I don't have internet access, which offers me the opportunity of not using an online Microsoft account. Continue with limited setup. And in here we create the local Windows user account. The username cannot be named administrator because this local Windows user account already exists. Password. I select random answers to the questions. I uncheck all of these. I'm not exactly sure what they're useful for. Accept. Let Cortana help you get things done. No. The installer has finished, has rebooted automatically as many times as it needed. And now we're logged in as the user account that we have just created into Windows inside the virtual machine. So the steps that I usually do at this point are to make sure that we're using the correct virtio drivers. So right click on the Windows Start menu, Device Manager. And we have the Ethernet controller, update driver, browse, E:, include subfolders, the default option, and next. It did the correct thing. And what type of network is this thing? I know. We have still 2 more Windows hardware devices that do not have a driver. So we're going to go right click, update driver on both, browse, next, close, right click, update, browse, next, close. Okay, at this point, there's nothing more that can be done in Device Manager. So I'm going to do the things that I usually do at this point, which is to create a snapshot of the virtual machine. So it's the state of the virtual machine immediately after installing Windows and installing drivers. And if the operating system does have updates, it's a good idea maybe to create the snapshot after you run Windows Update, but we're going to create the snapshot before running Windows Update this time. So let's shut down the machine. We're going to see if shutdown actually works. The virtual machine is stopped. In the main toolbar of the Virt Manager window for Windows 10, there's the button Manage VM Snapshots. On bottom left, Create New Snapshot plus button. Always internal snapshot mode, and always after install the name of the snapshot. Finish. At this point, we can start the virtual machine. In case we misconfigure something, in case something goes wrong with Windows Update, in case, you can always go back to the virtual machine snapshot named after install. I have never had a use for this snapshot. I have never used this snapshot, but it's there. It's going to take you back to a more or less vanilla state with a fresh, from scratch installation of Windows 10. Okay, at this point, I'm going to try to make it such that I don't use this window, which is the software virtual machine manager. For that, I'm going to enable the remote desktop protocol server inside of Windows 10. So the steps are probably, in my case, going to be like this. Settings. I find the mouse cursor to be too small, so I'm going to change that. Additional mouse options, pointers, default Windows extra large. I want to enable the remote desktop protocol server, which can be done in multiple ways. Right click on the Windows Start menu, System, and I know one of these options here, related settings. Rename this PC Advanced. Remote. Allow remote connections to this computer. Apply. If we click on the button Select the users, we can see that the current user, the user that we have created in the Windows 10 installer, already has access to the computer when we connect to the computer using remote desktop protocol. And next up, we want to see that to make sure that there's no Windows firewall which is not allowing incoming connections to the RDP protocol server, which is listening inside this virtual machine. So for that, I'm going to look at the firewall settings, which is Windows Defender Firewall with Advanced Security. It's a virtual machine. My other computers will not do bad things on this computer, so it's not a problem for me to actually disable all of the firewall profiles in Windows. It's not possible to connect from the outer internet towards this machine. I trust to run this virtual machine with zero firewall. Okay, at this point, probably I'm going to restart the computer, and I will try not to use this software. Let's see how we do that. Okay. And we want just one more thing in here. We can clean up the CD-ROM drives like this and like this. And we actually want to shut down the computer. if it works. Yes, sometimes Virt Manager has difficulty stopping Windows 10 virtual machines. I'm not sure why that is the case. We have an extra CD-ROM drive. Let's actually remove it. It's empty, but we're still going to remove it. Okay, so we're back to just one CD-ROM drive, and even that doesn't have an ISO file inside. At this point, I'm going to look at the network interface card settings and start the virtual machine. The virtual machine is running. Hopefully this is the IPv4 address of the virtual machine. Since I am on Linux, I will need a remote desktop protocol client application. This is my wiki page in mariusp.github.io. The first link in here, xrdp. Press the End key on the keyboard. And depending if your executable is named x3rdp or x3rdp3, first of all, you will need to install this software. Has different names depending on your Linux operating system. I'm probably using this one on Kubuntu 25.10, which is the operating system that I am currently using. It's called freerdp-x11. This is the name of the package. I install it with apt install freerdp3-x11, and the command line looks like this. Let's actually edit the command line. So x3rdp3, which is the name of the executable in /usr/bin/x3rdp3, and then requires a username, which must be specified in this format for x3rdp3, which is domain dot, means the current domain, backslash needs to be escaped, so backslash, and then the username, which is admin, and then initial resolution, width, and height, the IPv4 address of the computer that we connect to, 113, the best possible performance and features, and this is the best possible speed /network:/LAN. So this is how it looks like. And if this command line parameter works, then the newly started x3rdp3 window, if we resize this window, it will tell Windows 10 to change the resolution of Windows 10. And that's a very important feature for me. And this is if we want to play back on the host computer the sound that is from applications that are running inside the Windows 10 virtual machine. You can omit this part if you don't want to play back on the hardware computer, on the host computer, the sound inside the virtual machine. Let's get a terminal. Says that I did not connect to this computer. It uses a self-signed certificate by default, and I am going to trust this self-signed certificate. Asks for the password. It has logged into Windows using the user and password that I have specified. So dot, which means the local domain, which means the current Windows installation, and then admin, and then the password. Unfortunately, there's this issue in FreeRDP3 that we cannot see the Windows main panel, the taskbar by default. For that, I resize the FreeRDP window, for instance, like this, by double-clicking on the FreeRDP window. and then I try to resize. If that doesn't work, and it does not, then it means that FreeRDP can increase the size of Windows, but cannot decrease the size of Windows, the Windows operating system, the Windows desktop. So in this case, I'm going to start with a smaller initial resolution. So in this case, the height was the problem. So let's make this, I don't know, 980. And now the entire Windows desktop is visible. There's no scaling, just the FreeRDP window via the remote desktop protocol has told the Windows installation that the height should be 980. So let's actually prove that. Unfortunately, it's not displayed in here, but this is the actual resolution, the one that we have specified. So the entire width of 1080p, which is 1920, but the height is smaller than 1080p, so just 980. And probably now if we maximize this window, which will make the height a bit taller, it can increase the resolution of Windows. So this is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to connect to the Windows computer in graphical user interface mode using the remote desktop protocol. I want to be able to copy paste text. Let's see if that's the case. So copy from the host to the guest in the sense of virtual machine. Does work. From the virtual machine towards the host computer. Does work. So the three features that I get for free by using RDP: speed. I think that the remote desktop protocol works a bit faster than the default protocol that's provided by QEMU Virt Manager, which is probably Spice, or I don't know exactly what. And because it's native to Microsoft, it's optimized. I can copy paste text, and I can resize the window as I want. Sometimes I want to have the Windows 10 window take the left half of the screen and the right half of the screen to be taken by a web browser, for instance. And then I can navigate on my home computer with the normal settings in my web browser. I don't really need to install a web browser on the Windows virtual machine. And if needed, I can copy paste text from the web browser towards the virtual machine. From this point on, I do the usual terraforming that I do in Windows 10. So I don't like things that don't do anything. I want content, not Chrome. Chrome being useless buttons. I have never used this button, so I'm going to unpin it. I'm not sure what this thing is. Task view. Let's remove it. No search bar. No task view. News and interests turn off. I don't use Microsoft Edge. There's a ton of suggestions in here. Let's see if we can decrease the number. Where are the settings? So show suggestions occasionally in start. It says that because I didn't provide a license key to Windows when I have installed, and I did not activate Windows, I am forced to see suggestions occasionally in the start menu. I'm not sure what the timeline is. Okay. And I usually uninstall applications that I have never heard of or I have never used. But some of these applications will reappear once you upgrade Windows. Theoretically, there will be no future upgrades of Windows 10. So upgrade in the sense of the service pack, which means reinstalling the Windows operating system almost from scratch, as opposed to just installing updates. Let's see if we have any updates available. A ton. You should install all of them, of course. And make sure you're not upgrading to Windows 10. Make sure the computer, the virtual machine will not upgrade automatically to Windows 10. To Windows 11, to another version of the Windows operating system. Okay, and what else do? I probably look at the group policy. And I'm going to disable automatic Windows update. So these are the steps. Local group policy editor, local computer policy, computer configuration, administrative templates, Windows components, Windows update, configure automatic updates, double click on it, and say that automatic updates are disabled, which means that updates will not be installed by Windows whenever Windows wants. If you actually want to install updates, not a problem. You just go to the settings, update, check for updates, and you install them when you want them manually by clicking on the Install Now button. And because it's a virtual machine and I do not do strange things in here, I actually also disable Windows Defender, the antivirus, which I also do from the Windows local group policy editor. Okay. Paint 3D. I have never used this application. Skype. I'm not sure what this thing is for. Sticky notes. And this is it. A very fresh installation of Windows 10 inside Linux using QEMU VM virtio virt manager virtual manager software, and I am connecting with the best quality possible to the graphical user interface session using the remote desktop protocol. I'm using the best possible hardware specifications for the virtual machine by using virtio. I have also allocated a ton of resources, 10 gigabytes of random access memory, 200 gigabytes of virtual hard disk, and the network interface card is also of type virtio. So this virtual machine is extremely fast, snappy, powerful. I can develop on it, for instance, without a problem. The big limitation for this virtual machine is that you probably cannot do GPU graphics processing unit intensive tasks such as gaming and other computing on the GPU. So this is it. Thank you.